And now on Radio 4, Evan Davis and guests return with some more business insights on The Bottom Line.
Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line. And it's all about the workers on the programme this week as we focus on employment in our discussions. Now, have you noticed how many different arrangements for employing people there are? Partners, employees, contract workers, temps, or casual labour? When and why do companies choose one rather than another? And we'll also ask how far employers should go in checking on their employees' behaviour. But, as always, before any of that, we'll spend a few minutes meeting each of my three guests. And first up is Eric Bourne, the Swiss chief executive of a British company, Wincanton, which is a logistics and transport company. And, Eric, it has its origins in the dairy industry, I think.
Yes, that's correct. The origin is in collecting milk from the farmers and bringing it to the dairies. And we are still doing that.
You're still doing that, but
yes.
It's much bigger than that now.
Oh, it's much bigger than that now, and we work across multiple sectors like retail, FMCG, construction, defence, and really make sure the right things are at the right place at the right time.
Right. So how many trucks in your fleet?
We manage around 5,000 trucks in the UK.
5,000? Gosh,
yes.
That is really quite a lot.
It is quite a lot. A lot of them are the customers' trucks, and we manage them on their behalf.
Right, so they don't all have Wincanton on the side?
No, not at all.
So what's the difference between the customer truck and the Wincanton truck? The customer truck only carries that customer's product?
Not necessarily.
No.
Some we use in collaborative transport forms across multiple customers. But we don't need to be that visible. We are quite happy in managing the trucks which have the customer's livery on it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the Olympics a little bit, probably quite a lot from now on over the summer. But are you ready for the Olympics?
We are ready indeed. We have been planning since September. We work with the guys from Locock and the Freight Association for the Olympics. And we are definitely ready. Will it be difficult? Yes, it will, but that's our job.
So I don't even know what you're going to begin to do, because London is not going to quite be shut, but there are not going to be as many lanes for trucks as there normally are.
That's correct. So we'll have to adjust delivery windows, we'll have to deliver to people at different times and so on. So we work together, as I said, with the officials, our customers and our teams in order to make sure things happen in London.
Are we going to get nighttime deliveries where we wouldn't normally? Is that going to be one of the ways out?
Yes, it will.
All right, well, also with us, not employing a fleet of 5,000 trucks, much more at the start-up end, is entrepreneur Jason Iftakhar, co-founder of Swifty Scooters. Now, this is a company based in Salford, manufacturing, well, they're adult-sized push scooters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct, yeah. Adult-sized kick scooters, all made in the UK. We started in September last year, and we're now exporting around the world,
So the proposition is what? I mean, it's that we've seen children pushing themselves around on little scooters.
Yep.
And you thought adults want to do this as well.
Yeah, this is the premium end of the adult scooter market. So we thought, why can't the kids all have the fun? The adults need to as well. So this is the bigger brother, so to speak, of the little aluminium ones that all the kids run around on.
Yeah. What's the competition? Is the competition a bicycle, or is the competition, some other form of entertainment? Is it
Yeah, I suppose there's bicycles. I'll have to add as well that it's a folding scooter, so it folds flat, so it'll go into the boot of your car or in your hallway. So it's like the kind of convenience, I suppose. We have quite a broad demographic. There's commuters that ride them, there's the bigger kids as well. So, it's quite broad. But yeah, I suppose a bicycle, is our competitor.
Well, the crucial thing is, do you ride them on the road or on the pavement? That's really the...
You can ride them on either or, really. We say to our customers, you can get fined for riding a bicycle on the pavement, but this is a kick scooter, so your foot's in contact with the ground. So
so this is why people might buy a scooter rather than a bike.
We're converting people who possibly don't want to cycle on the road and would prefer to scoot because it's perceived as being safer. I came from Piccadilly this morning on my scooter, got off at Euston, scooted over here.
You scooted here from the station, didn't you?
From the station, yeah. And it took me a few minutes, compared to if you were to get the underground or if you were to walk. We say that a 15-minute walk, so more or less a kilometre, takes about 3 or 4 minutes on the scooter.
What's interesting about the way your business has evolved is you actually have a design consultancy.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you designed the product and said, OK, let's make one for instead of consulting, let's actually set up something.
Yeah, the consultancy that me and my wife run, my wife's a fashion menswear designer, I'm a product designer. So we've designed the entire business, and we call it an ultra-lean concept where not just in time for manufacture, but we design the branding, the business structure. The product was almost the easy thing because that's what we do in everyday life. But it's quite interesting the way we operate. We can bring in outside skills, so part-time staff really easily, who are seniors in their own right. They're freelancers, so they're really highly skilled. And we have a team where we can expand and contract per project.
All right. Well, my final guest returning to the programme is Nick Buckles, who's Chief Executive of the security giant G4S. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you.
And we just were talking about the Olympics. Olympics is going to be, London Olympics is going to be very big for you, I imagine.
Yeah, huge for us. It's obviously our main focus in the UK at the moment. We're in the process of recruiting 10,500 staff for the 8-week period. Going pretty well. In addition to that, we'll be supervising about another 14,000 on security.
25,000 in all, under your management.
Yeah, basically, although the military clearly are self-managed, they're part of the whole process.
You haven't contracted that out to you yet.
No.
You're working on it.
Yeah. But of course, same logistics challenge. We've got to collect and deliver cash to all the locations, basically. In our normal cash transportation business, that's got to be done at night. It's going to be difficult. But no, we're really excited about it. We're also a bronze level sponsor. We won the contract about 2 years ago and have worked hard on getting it right ever since.
You're not the only security company working inside the compound, are you? Or are you the only one doing it? Are you official?
We're the
security?
official sponsor, so we may use a small element of subcontractors if they're already on the venues, but basically it's our contract and our staff.
Are you the biggest in the world? I think you might be the biggest in the world.
We're the biggest security company by a long way, yeah.
Yeah. Now, before we move on, probably not a topic you particularly want to talk about, but I did want to ask you about ISS. There was an ill-fated non-event, a £5 billion G4S bid for rival ISS, whose name I think, incidentally, you see all over the place. I mean, ISS is a very large company, not just in the UK, all over the place. Mm-hmm. What happened there? You thought you'd like to take it over, and the shareholders didn't really want you to.
I guess that sums it up. We'd worked on the deal for a long time, and the process that we're advised to go through is that you consult with shareholders with a fairly short time window before you announce. We did that. Our advice was that you've got enough support to continue with the launch of the bid on the Monday, and share price didn't respond too well on the first morning. Clearly we felt then over the next couple of weeks it was going to be an uphill battle to convince all our shareholders that it was the right deal to do, and I think it's fair to say that everybody involved with the deal feels like they didn't do as well as they should have done, including ourselves, the board, the shareholders and the advisors, and timing was bad. And
I imagine the advisors got paid all the same, probably, for all the advice they gave you for the non-bid.
They sort of didn't really. So the corporate banking side that would have been paid out if the bill had been successful didn't get paid, but there were big fees for things like arranging the debt. The biggest chunk of fees was for hedging the debt facility. So yes, it was a big chunk of cost, but it wasn't really for the advisors. But no, we all learnt lessons from that. I think the market learnt lessons about how to communicate deals. And we've moved on now. We had a good first quarter and we're glad we've put it behind us.
Well, that's a very good point to get us into our main topic, employment, and the variety of different forms of contract and arrangement between employers and the people who work for them. We've got 3 very varied employers here. And let's find out how you do things. Jason, you only employ, what, as members of staff?
Yeah, only myself, my wife and Alistair. So there's only 3,
Right.
So quite small.
Yeah,
but we do employ freelancers. We bring them in and out as we need, so we can expand and contract as we need to.
And the manufacture is all contracted out as well. That's not...
Yep. Some of it we used to do a little bit in-house as well. There's small things that we do, like we cut the grip tape for the footplate out ourselves.
Right.
We do all the assembly ourselves, so that's done in-house. So quality control is really important, given we're really new and start-up.
OK, that's the very small end. What about Wincanton, Eric?
We employ 16,000 people in the UK and I. Probably 90% of those 16,000 are on fixed full-time permanent contract. We have about an additional few hundred on part-time contracts, and then we have an incremental few thousand agency labour to flex the peaks and troughs of our operation.
So that's the point for you, is basically your staff are employees.
Yes.
But you have a sort of top-up flexi operation where you would hire.
Yes, exactly. So if you think about a retail operation prior Christmas or prior Jubilee weekend, there is obviously significantly more throughput than on average, and so therefore we have to have the flexibility to flex, which we do with agency labour.
Is your model, is that typical of the industry, or are you employing more? Because I'm actually slightly surprised you're employing quite as many as you are, 90%.
For us, it's typical. It has been pretty stable. If I look at our business in the different market sectors we operate in, we really manage to what you would call the stable throughput. We manage with permanent staff to the lowest level of throughput, which is very important in order to make sure the people are trained properly. And, well, we have to train agency as well, but you just get that quality and the development of the people, and then we just top up.
Well, Nick, what proportion of the people, when you say your employer, do you actually employ on a contract?
Well, we've got 650,000 staff worldwide, and I would say 99% are employed. So we basically work an employment model. Most of our staff are working on contracts, so they're contract-backed. We can get enough flexibility in an employment arrangement to make that full-time headcount work. In fact, if you were to probably apportion that to full-time equivalents, it would be significantly higher because our staff typically work longer hours than the norm. So we employ various models in various countries, but really we are an employment model, basically.
But you go to the Olympic Games, you're going to have 25,000. Yeah. You're not employing the people.
In this case,
there must be loads of people who are not going to be employed.
Yeah, for events in the UK, that's part of our UK business. We have a book of staff that just work events, so they have other jobs and they come and work for us for events. They've been screened, trained, etc. But it's all additional work to the work they do currently. For the Olympics, they will be on a contract for the period of the Olympics, albeit a very short term.
But sorry, when you say you employ them, I mean, how many people are on permanent contract?
Nearly all of them, yeah.
They're still nearly all on permanent contract.
Yeah, with varying commitments to ours, but as long as you get flexibility, that's fine for us. There's plenty of work for people to do. So we do have the other models as well. So we do have part-timers and we do have agency staff on occasions, but it's nearly all employees.
So most of the people who you see with G4S overalls on or uniforms on are going to get a paycheck every month, and it's going to have G4S on it. It's not going to be a subcontracting.
Correct. And think about it as well, a lot of the business we're winning in the UK now is coming from taking on employees from government, basically. So we're transferring full-time staff from government to our business, basically. Our business is employing and managing staff. Of our revenue, 90% of it goes out in staff costs, basically. So that is our business, so we've got to do that well and do it efficiently.
Talk me through advantages and disadvantages, each of you, of different employment forms. Give us your take, Eric.
Well, obviously, the main advantage of having a core workforce is you have staff loyalty, they are trained well, they associate themselves with the business, which is really, really important to have your employees go the extra mile for the customer all the time. So I think that's a very, very, very big plus. And we invest a lot of time in developing our staff. And I think, as I said earlier, if you just have very short peaks for a week or two, it's easier to then work within geographic areas with some agencies which you can train the people up, and whenever you have a peak, you can actually draw in those people, and so you don't have to retrain them to the same level every time because they're familiar with the business and so on.
So even some of the temps or the agency staff, they are on a kind of register or a kind of...
absolutely.
So they're not completely alien to the business. It's not just going out and picking them off the street in the morning. And...
No, definitely not, but it does not say Wincanton on the paycheck. So obviously on the paycheck they're paid by the agency, we pay the agency. But we endeavour to make sure we can have the same people over and over again.
It's interesting, isn't it, that even from your very
it's
small...
similar, yeah. It's kind of similar. We have a number of people who have worked with us for a few years. They're technically freelancers, so they go off and they work for other companies and other customers and other projects. But because we've built up a really good relationship, and they know that they're also... I mean, a girl that works for... She's a graphic designer, and she's worked for us for 3 or 4 years now. And she comes back every now and again, and because she's got all that skill set that we've trained her, that's helped her to get other work elsewhere. But it means that, as a business, similar, we can not take a huge risk with permanent staff and growing too quick, and allow a start-up business to grow, and that capital can be used for building the stock, for example, or new development.
I think it's also important that the UK, although people complain about the degree of legislation in the UK, in terms of employment, I think it's one of the freest markets to employ in. If you go into our European businesses, it's much more difficult to reduce people's hours, to get flexibility in pay, flexibility in rostering, and then you do have to look at other models because you do get left with a large sort of fixed cost on an ongoing basis. But in the UK, I think the whole employment market is much more open to using subcontractors, using people on temporary contracts if you have to, because that's just the way it's developed in the last 20 or so years. And
I don't understand. I would have thought in the UK, because you can be more flexible with your permanent staff, you didn't need the temps, whereas in France or Spain, maybe you do want the temps because you can't.
You're not allowed to employ them there. That's the difference.
Right,
it's very difficult to actually replace full-time staff with temporary and agency staff.
Right.
Whereas in the UK, you can do a lot of mix and matching, basically.
Right.
And people are prepared to work on that basis more so.
What's the Swiss experience, Eric? Probably now you've lost contact with your mother country, but probably some experience there.
The Swiss labour market is probably the most simplest labour market, I would say, within Europe. So it's obviously not part of the EU, but I have never experienced in Switzerland so many agency workers, for example, as in the UK. But then in Switzerland, you can employ people and you have a contractual notice period. And if you lay people off, as long as you pay the contractual notice period which you define, then job done. It's not complicated.
I thought the Brits were pretty deregulated, so actually in Switzerland it's almost easier than
it's definitely easier.
You're not caught by EU legislation, I guess. That's the difference,
exactly.
Isn't it?
I see. Are you a supporter, Nick, of the Beecroft report, which wanted no-fault dismissal, employers being able to fire staff? You'd have to compensate them, obviously, but...
I think in reality that happens in big companies. You have negotiated settlements for almost anybody that you want to leave the organisation. So I think in reality it happens. You treat people well, you treat them properly, but you just go through that process anyway. So yeah, I would be in favour of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, now very, very interesting. Now, just a reminder, you're listening to The Bottom Line, and my guests this week are Eric Bourne of logistics firm Wincanton, Jason Iftakhar of Swifty Scooters, and Nick Buckles of G4S. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to ask you also about the euro. It's obviously... We could talk about it every week. We try not to talk about it every week. Is it affecting life much among you? I mean, you're an exporter, Jason. Are you paid in euros? You just take the money and put it in a bank account? And...
Every sale's a sale. We export to Europe and around the world, and I think we're a little bit too young to know any different than how it is at the moment. So maybe in a couple of years I'll be able to answer a bit better, but we sell to many countries in the EU and also outside. They're selling, so... It's not all doom and gloom, for sure.
We only operate in the UK and Ireland, so in Ireland we certainly have the euro. But having said that, it's not a major issue. I think the whole uncertainty about the impact the euro or the fallout of if certain people leave the euro will obviously impact our customers quite heavily and therefore impact us. One step removed, yes, so it's certainly an issue which we monitor.
Yeah. Nick, you have a particularly special role in all of this because you carry cash around.
We do.
You haven't been commissioned to carry new drachmas from some secret printing press somewhere to...
Not that I'm aware of. No, I think the Europe situation for us is we're not in France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, so we're not in some of the key territories, but we're in Scandinavia, Benelux, Eastern Europe, Greece, Israel. As far as I'm concerned, we can't affect what happens in the European environment. Where we monitor what's going on. It's a very tough market anyway in Europe at the moment. It's our slowest growing part of our business.
Are you moving more gold around? Has gold been affected by all of this?
We've certainly been moving a lot more gold around in the last 2 or 3 years internationally because of the attractiveness of the gold price. So that's certainly helped our international valuables movement business. And actually in places like Hungary and Greece, when people get a little bit nervous about the banks on occasions, we have to shift a lot more cash into the bank branches for customers to withdraw. So it does have an impact on our business, but it's not significant.
So you can tell which banks are having incipient runs by requiring more cash to go in.
We probably could.
Yeah. Now, let's return to our theme today, which is the labour market and with workforces, and talk about monitoring employees. The Economist has called this subject Big Brother bosses. We all know the phrase, your call may be recorded for training and security purposes, but really all that is often a sign the company wants to check on its call centre staff. Just one sign of it, in fact. But it is a huge business monitoring staff, and I'm interested in how far you all take it and how far you think it should go. Eric, probably the first industry to professionalise monitoring its staff was trucking with the tachograph. It was basically a way of, it was called the spy in the cab, wasn't it?
Well, I wouldn't quite call it a spy in the cab. Yes, it was really to make sure that there's a regulatory environment and people couldn't drive for more than X hours, and you have to have your rest and everything. And so having tachographs in place was actually nothing else than a security measure in order to make sure that the staff is properly rested and doesn't work when they shouldn't, which obviously, we have all heard the horror stories of some transport people coming over from Eastern Europe, driving for God knows how long, and then, endangering people around. So, I think those are important things to measure. It's the same like measuring training and making sure that you have a proper record and people are properly trained.
How about you, Nick?
No, I mean, our business is about security, clearly, and until you asked the question, I hadn't really thought about it, but clearly most of our security officers historically have carried a torch around with them for checking where they've been during the day, basically. That's to make sure they've done patrols, etc. And that's been a part of the industry for decades. But,
sorry, how do you mean?
So nowadays, basically, all our US new workers signed up with the security officers having a PDA. So they're all issued with a PDA, basically. It has their assignment instructions on it, and it basically tracks what they do day in and day out. So it's there for proof of presence. We use it for payroll to make sure when they've turned up and when they've left. So basically they are monitored 24 hours a day when they're at work, basically. That's not all our staff, but certainly all our new contracts in the US are on that basis. A lot of our old contracts have got older technology. And then, of course, we were probably one of the first to use vehicle tracking in the 80s for all our cash-in-transit vehicles. So in the UK, we had our own system called Data Track, and we were monitoring the whereabouts of every vehicle 24 hours a day.
That wasn't so much monitoring the staff, though, was that?
No.
Security for the...
It was absolutely for security, but we had to go through the unions to make sure it was accepted. And no, so basically nearly all our staff are monitored on or off 24 hours a day. That's part of what we do as health and safety, proof of presence, and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Staff don't always like it, though, do they? I was looking back, actually, at the debate over tachographs in this country when they came in. They kind of first announced, I think, and then there was quite a long time before the law actually started mandating that the lorries were fitted with tachographs. But there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm by the workers for them. I mean, basically,
whenever you change something, there is not always the greatest degree of enthusiasm. If you change a habit of a lifetime and you suddenly introduce something new, and I think that's just normal, But it's just evolution of time. I look back, and not too long ago, I think when you went and worked in a factory or you worked in a warehouse, somebody wrote down what time you showed up for work. Then you had the cards which and now you have your fingerprint. And your fingerprint you sign in and out with your finger. Yes, and that's really good. Now you can look at, somebody could say, well, actually, this is measuring me. Or you could equally say, it's actually making sure that we know what time you showed up, what time you left, and it's linked to payroll, so you are paid the right amount of time.
Do you drug test your staff?
There are some random tests which happen, yes, but clearly you have to have certain precautionary measures in order to make sure
don't assume that I'm thinking it's a bad thing.
No,
I mean, I would rather we had truck drivers that had been drug tested from time to time and worried that they might be. So
it's like sports people. They get drug tested from time to time, so does the driver, in order to make sure there are no substances they shouldn't have used.
Actually, we haven't had a lot of pushback on any systems we put in with people. Not at all. Even to the extent, and I'm sure it's the same with Eric, we've got fuel utilisation systems on our vehicles where...
now this is one where surely this is basically measuring if they change gear at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about reducing fuel costs for us, clearly, but it's also about vehicle life. It's about the green CSR agenda, reducing fuel costs. And so you sit down a driver at the end of the day and say, you could have driven this route more effectively if you'd done X, Y, and Z.
And you do the same.
Yeah, we do the same, but there is nothing different to that. Like if you would be a picker in a warehouse, you measure the pick rate. So if somebody doesn't have a certain pick rate, you go back and you think, how, do we have to train you in order to make sure you get more efficient? How can we help you to perform better?
And your staff don't worry, they don't mind being told you drove this route in too low a gear, your average speed was too high.
I think it depends how you use those systems. If you use those systems, you get done what you measure. So if you measure it and you help, what we really do is we help the drivers in order to make sure that they can drive more efficiently.
But it sounds like you're basically sort of... I can imagine that the driver sees it very differently to being helped. They see it as
I suppose the question is how much is that data then used and analysed and actually implicated in reprimanding or praising someone who overperforms? Is there a certain degree of it's kind of, I suppose, ignored a little bit just to have it there so that it puts the pressure on the employee more and it's not always analyses.
No, I think it's there as part of performance management and performance measurement.
It must be a lot to manage, though.
Yeah, but you have visibility of people sat in front of you. In the olden days when you ran a business, nowadays you have visibility through technology and information. And you're right, you could use it to the extent that you have so much information, you don't actually simplify. But as long as you measure an employee on 3 or 4 aspects, I think it's fine, and use it constructively. And they expect to be nowadays. Most people expect appraisals, they expect feedback.
Yeah.
To know what they need to do to get on in the organisation. So I don't think it's... I think the days are changing. I think people do want to be measured. They do want to seem to be successful.
The small firm like yours, Jason, of course, it is completely different because you don't need a system.
Chips in people.
You don't need a system, do you?
You don't put chips in people. Do you?
No. They're working on it. But Jason, you don't tag employees, do you?
Not often. No, we don't at all.
Jason, you see, the thing is, the difference between the big company and the small company is you don't need a system to monitor because you just know whether Alistair is doing his job or not doing his job.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a difference really between a firm where you're on first name terms and one where you have 60,000
it's a personal relationship. And
your wife, of course, you probably don't monitor her when you
No, she monitors me very much so. Yeah, everything is totally performance. You know, we give a lot of training, a lot of time to the people that work for freelance for us. We've just taken on a part-time designer who's left a full-time position to come and work with us because he recognises that he can learn from myself and Camilla and he can build his career. And we encourage that, and he's got some responsibility, but it is very much performance. If he doesn't, he knows he has to do a certain amount of work and produce a certain amount of drawings every day for this project that we've got, and if he doesn't, then, it might be someone else who will step in and take his position possibly. So, I think it's about fairness, really. It's about being fair and being realistic in this day and age. You know, it's a really tough time. It's tough for us as a startup. That's why I say we have this kind of ultra-lean kind of concept where every single penny is considered. You know, I could tell you how much each nut and washer costs on our scooter, and it's because all of those pennies add up, don't they, obviously? And it's even more important so to be like that now in this climate. So we don't have these systems in place, but it's almost it's a personal thing that we do anyway.
But you're still monitoring.
Yeah.
It is fascinating how with 2 very large businesses and 1 very, very small business, you do end up with similar preoccupations and interests. Well, the clock is the way we're monitored. Actually, we monitor on lots of things here, but the clock is one of them. And I think we'd better draw this to a close at this point. Just time to thank Eric Bourne of Wincanton, Jason Iftakhar of Swifty Scooters, and Nick Buckles of G4S. Do visit our website, bbc.co.uk/bottomline, and there are details of our podcast. I'll be back with more guests next week.
The Bottom Line was presented by Evan Davis. The producer was Ben Carter. And the programme is made in association with the Open University.